announcement to make and one ruling. The first announcement is that I wish to acquaint the House with the presence in the public gallery of Honorable Leisa Vasilenko, a member of Committee on Climate in Parliament of Ukraine. I wish, on behalf of the National Assembly of Zambia, to receive our distinguished guest and warmly welcome her in our midst. Thank you. The ruling is as follows. This is, honorable members, this is a ruling on a point of order raised on 13th June 2023 by Mr. S. Kampyongo, Member of Parliament for Shuangandu constituency, against Honorable M.E. Posha MP, Minister of Water Development and Sanitation, for insinuating that there are houses full of money without substantiating his assertion. Honorable members, the House will recall that on Tuesday, 13th June 2023, when the House was considering question for oral answer number 284, and the Honorable Mr. Imposha MP, Minister of Water Development and Sanitation, was responding to a supplementary question by Mr. S. Kampyongo, Member of Parliament for Shuangandu Parliamentary Constituency, raised a point of order. The point of order was based on Standing Order 65(1)(b), which requires a member debating to ensure the information he or she provides is factual and verifiable. In his point of order, Mr. S. Kampyongo MP asked whether the Honorable Member Minister of Water Development and Sanitation was in order to insinuate that some houses were full of money without laying evidence on the table to substantiate his assertion. Honorable members, in her immediate response, the Honorable Madam First Deputy Speaker reserved her ruling. I have studied the matter and I will now render my ruling. Honorable members, the point of order raises the issue of a member's duty to ensure that the information he or she provides to the House is factual and verifiable. Honorable members, I had recourse to the relevant verbatim record in order to ascertain whether the Honorable Minister of Water Development and Sanitation made the statement as alleged. The relevant excerpt of this statement is as follows, and I quote, Madam Speaker, the people of Katombola have asked a very good supplementary question, and I was about to say that it is the desire of this government to ensure that all the monies are recovered from those who looted, not perceived looters, but those who looted because the evidence is overwhelming of several thousands of dollars, millions of kwacha being kept in people's homes. So that is not a perception. End of quote. Honorable members, evidently, it is that statement that was the basis of Mr. S. Kampyongo's MP's point of order. Honorable members, let me state from the outset that members enjoy freedom of speech and debate in the House. However, the freedom is not absolute because it is subject to the law and the rules of the House. One such restraint is the requirement for members to debate factually. Standing Order 65(1)(b) of the National Assembly of Zambia Standing Orders 2021 compels members to debate factually. It provides as follows, and I quote, 65(1). A member who is debating shall, b, ensure that the information he or she provides to the House is factual and verifiable. End of quote. Honorable members, I had occasion to rule on a similar matter when Mr. M. Kafwaya, Member of Parliament for Lunte constituency, raised a point of order against Honorable D. Siakalima MP, Minister of Education. daily parliamentary debates of 17th June 2022. In that matter, Mr. M. Kafwaya, MP, stated that the Honorable Minister of Education had accused the previous government of operating in a haphazard manner without providing evidence to support his statement. In my ruling, I stated as follows, and I quote, "From the excerpt, it is clear that the Honorable Minister attempted to justify his statement by referring to a conversation he had had with some researchers who allegedly conducted a research in the country. However, this was not supported by any documentary or cogent evidence as envisaged by Standing Order 65. In view of this, the Honorable Minister breached Standing Order 65 and was out of order." End of quote. Honorable members, in this matter, the Honorable Minister of Water Development and Sanitation informed the House that some people's houses were full of dollars or money. He, however, did not lay any evidence to support his assertion. In view of this, the Honorable Minister breached the Standing Order 65(1)(b) and was out of order. Honorable members, regrettably, I have noticed a tendency on both sides of the House of members making unsubstantiated statements which have the potential to mislead the House and the public at large. I wish to remind you to avoid making such unsubstantiated statements in the House. I thank you. Matters of urgent public importance. There is an indication from three honorable members, Honorable Member for Petauke, Kamfisa, Mpika, and last entry of Lumaizi. So those are the matters of urgent public importance. We'll start with the Honorable Member for Petauke Central. Please, Honorable Members, as you raise your matters of urgent public importance, remember the guidance given and the criteria. You may proceed, Honorable Member for Petauke Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving the good people of Petauke this opportunity to raise an urgent matter of public importance, Madam Speaker. And the matter is directed, before I go ahead, I've seen the Minister of Finance, to congratulate him on the new Dawn government for the good job you did in parish. That's what you want, but also make sure that it should trickle down to the people. Madam Speaker, the matter is directed to the lead of government business in the House, Her Honor the Vice President. Madam Speaker, in Petauke, the district commissioner went and stopped the grader, which was working to work on all the roads across the constituency, which the CDF approved.
Honorable Member, before I even curtail, that matter definitely does not qualify to be raised as a matter of public importance.
How?
You can direct it to, you can ask it in another form. Can we make progress? The Honorable Member for Kamfisa.
I thank you most sincerely, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to raise an urgent matter directed at the Minister of Energy. Madam Speaker, there's a crisis of fuel in Kitwe, and my investigations, Madam Speaker, has confirmed that it is not only Kitwe that is affected by the shortage of fuel. Madam Speaker, is the Minister of Energy in order not to come to this August House to assure the public that the crisis that we are witnessing of fuel will not affect the wheels of economy? I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I seek your guidance.
Thank you very much. I've not heard about it. I don't know if the Honorable Minister of Energy is aware that there is a shortage of fuel on the Copper Belt and the other areas. Maybe you can just indicate whether you need to have some time to go and investigate and come back, then it will be in order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I need to get to the office and consult with ERB, then I can come and make a statement on it. Submit.
Okay, since the Honorable Minister, and maybe that's why there's justification. That's why there's justification for the Honorable Member for Kamfisa to have raised it. And since the Honorable Minister is not aware, the Honorable Minister can come back to the House on tomorrow, Thursday. On Thursday this week, to render a ministerial statement on that. The Honorable Member from Pika.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to raise a matter of urgent public importance pursuant to Standing Order number 134. Madam Speaker, the Mines and Minerals Act is very clear.
Order, Honorable Member. The matter is directed to which ministry?
The Minister of Mines, Madam Speaker. The Minister of Mines, or indeed the Leader of Government Business in the House, if the Minister is not around, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Precisely to the point.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have an area in Mpika where gold has been discovered. And in that area, no one was being licensed yet to mine. However, Madam Speaker, a company called Ntamba Mweru has moved heavy equipment to the site and they are mining. Madam Speaker, in the process, they have even destroyed the bridge that connects Kanyelele and Mtamba villages. They have been mining and taking the dust that contains the mineral to another area for hiding. There is a very big heap.
Order, Honorable Member for Mpika. I believe you can take your seat. I believe you did raise that matter in maybe last week or the other week. It was raised on the mining of gold or the discovery of gold in Mpika. And I recall that the Honorable Minister came to deliver a statement on the floor of this House. Since now it relates to a particular company which is, according to you, mining, just put in a question, then the Minister will be able to tackle it. I'm not admitting your point, your matter of urgent public importance, because just about 2 weeks ago, we did discuss the same issue.
It's a difference, Madam Speaker.
So the Honorable Member for Lumezi.
Thank you, very kind, Madam Speaker, for permitting the people of Lumezi to raise a matter of urgent public importance directed at her honor, the Vice President and Leader of Government Business in this House. Madam Speaker, today, the leading newspaper tabloid News Diggers had a story, "Torn down, cooperate, or will use minimum force. IG warns opposition." Madam Speaker, it is in the interest of the Zambian people that we should know what is minimum force. Are they coming to pluck?
Order, Honorable Member, that matter definitely does not qualify. You can put in a question to the Minister. He can come and answer if you want him to answer what minimum force is all about. But definitely we cannot allow it or admit it as a matter of urgent public importance. The Honorable Member for Zambezi East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise on this matter of urgent public importance with a very heavy heart. Last weekend, I traveled to my constituency in Zambezi.
Order, Honorable Member, directed at which ministry?
the matter of urgent public importance is directed at the Minister of Health. I visited Zambezi during the weekend and went to the dilapidated Zambezi District Hospital. Madam Speaker, I seek your indulgence. In my tribe, they say, when a person is complaining, it means it is paining. I keep on bringing this matter because this is a serious issue and it relates to life. I was taken into the so-called theater at Zambezi District Hospital. It's a pathetic situation, Madam Speaker.
Maybe just not to curtail you, Honorable Member, I think from where you are going, I can see that that is a matter that you can deal with by putting in a question. Since it involves a hospital and a theater, you can put in an urgent question so that the minister can be able to address it. We will achieve the same goal or the same result.
Most obliged, Madam Speaker. I'll put in an urgent question.
Thank you. Honorable members, I had indicated when we started, I had said, I had called out the members that have raised matters of urgent public importance. Honorable member for Kankoyo and Kasenengwa, you were not out. This is an afterthought. We need to make progress. We have two ministerial statements and questions. So I will not admit because I had already advised. So that concludes matters of urgent public importance. I have permitted the Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning to make a ministerial statement. The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
Madam Speaker, I wish to thank you for according me this opportunity to provide insights on the debt restructuring for Zambia. Our country has been trying to restructure its foreign debt from 2016, but that effort produced no results. Madam Speaker, I'm happy to tell you that the job has now been done. I will now provide the details. Madam Speaker, we have to start from the genesis of the problem of Zambia's unsustainable debt. The stock of external debt in 2011 was 1.9 billion US dollars. That is just under $2 billion. 1.98 billion 2011. By the end of 2021, the external debt had risen to 13.04 billion. The rise in this stock implied an increase in debt service, that is, the amount of kwacha cash that is needed to repay the principal and interest on this debt. Debt service payments accounted for only 9% of domestic revenues in 2011. In other words, in 2011, for every one kwacha raised in domestic revenue, only about 9 ngwe for every kwacha of revenue collected was used to repay the principal and interest on the debt. In 2020, this went up. It was now for every kwacha that was collected in revenue, the amount needed to service the debt was 51.7 ngwe, more than half of every kwacha collected in revenue. With 51.7 ngwe out of every kwacha of domestic revenues going towards debt service, and another 39.4 ngwe going towards wages and salaries for public servants, this meant that 91.1 ngwe out of each kwacha collected in domestic revenues was committed to debt service and payment of wages and salaries. Madam Speaker, which means that the balance out of every kwacha was 8.9 ngwe, which remained for all other government programs, including buying medicines, provision of school requisites, government operations, construction and rehabilitation of roads, supporting our small-scale farmers through Farmer Input Support Program, supporting this institution in Parliament, and supporting constituencies through Constituency Development Funds, CDF. This was obviously an impossible task. No wonder CDF was seldom ever released by the Treasury those days. As the COVID-19 shock unfolded, financing pressures emerged. The kwacha depreciated and inflation spiked, increasing the external debt burden expressed in kwacha. Unencumbered, that is free foreign exchange reserves, shrank to 970 million by the end of October 2020, against debt service of around 1.4 billion US dollars on contracted foreign currency denominated loans. Unable to meet its external obligations, government defaulted on its external debt in November 2020 and implemented a moratorium on payment of debt obligations in order to undertake a comprehensive debt restructuring exercise. A debt sustainability analysis, DSA, was conducted in 2020. It indicated that Zambia's debt was unsustainable and the country faced debt distress. If nothing was done to restructure the debt, and this is very important, if nothing was done to restructure the debt, then out of each kwacha collected in domestic revenue in 2021, 70 ngwe was needed towards debt service. So every kwacha of tax you collected, 70 ngwe out of that would go to debt service. Now, if we add payment of wages and salaries, which was about 43 ngwe in every kwacha collected in domestic revenue, it would have meant that to service the debt and pay salaries and wages, all the taxes collected in the country, plus what you needed to borrow to put on top of that, that is what you'd need. In other words, all the taxes collected would be swallowed up by debt service and payment of salaries and wages, but that would not even be enough. You still need to go and borrow some more to add on to that. Madam Speaker, this obviously would have meant that nothing would remain to spend on any other government program. Clearly, this would have brought the country to its knees. Hence, given this problem, in November 2020, the government suspended debt service payments to its creditors. But this suspension was unilateral and as such not agreed upon with creditors. So it is the Zambian government that simply said, from now onwards, no paying you without agreeing with the creditors. This was obviously not a sustainable solution to the debt crisis facing the country, because the creditors could at any time drag the country to court. The debt of the country needed to be structured formally. Madam Speaker, fortunately, a group of rich countries called the G20 realized that the debt problem that Zambia and other poor countries were facing was real and big. In 2020, they devised a formal but temporary solution called the Debt Service Suspension Initiative, DSSI. DSSI was an initiative, they said, of the G20 to allow countries facing debt distress to suspend payment of debt service to most creditors, except multilateral creditors such as the World Bank, African Development Bank, and others. But this too was a temporal solution. Temporal because the creditors would need to be paid. A formal and lasting solution to the debt problem, other than mere suspension of debt servicing, was required. Accordingly, the same G20 established the common framework for debt treatment beyond the Debt Service Suspension Initiative. This process was meant to provide long-term debt reliefs to countries like Zambia. The initiative was to be pursued together with creditors. But restructuring the debt of the country is not automatic. It is a process that requires cooperation between debtors and creditors, and indeed other stakeholders. Also, a country that faces debt distress must satisfy some preconditions in order to be allowed into the process of restructuring its debt. This is where debtor countries, such as Zambia, sometimes fail to make progress. Indeed, Zambia was one of the countries that failed to make progress in this regard until when this European government came into office. According to the common framework, a country that faces debt distress, as Zambia did, requires to discuss with all its creditors together and not discuss with them one by one to get the debt to be restructured. This, in other words, discussing with all of them, creates trust and avoids suspicion of some creditors getting better deals on the side. This is why, for official creditors, the Official Creditors Committee was formed to negotiate with Zambia on how to get her debt to be restructured. In addition, creditors require that the debtor country must have an active program with the IMF, International Monetary Fund. This gives them the assurance that the country whose debt is being considered for restructuring is conducting its financial affairs in a satisfactory manner. However, the IMF also requires that the creditors cooperate in structuring the debt before they can agree to provide a financing program with the debtor country. These complex relationships highlight the importance of strong coordination and cooperation among stakeholders. It is here where, prior to this government coming into office, Zambia failed to coordinate and manage relationships, and her commitment to debt restructuring and prudent financial management was put into question. Zambia made a request through the G20 Common Framework for more sustainable debt treatment in 2020. Consequently, a creditor committee for the country was formed by countries with eligible claims on Zambia. The committee was co-chaired by China and France, with South Africa being the vice chair. This committee deliberated extensively regarding the extent of relief that Zambia requires, which would be compatible with the IMF's debt sustainability parameters. In other words, the outcome of the negotiations should be a structured debt that takes the country out of debt distress. I think this is very important. I'll read it again. In other words, the outcome of the negotiations should be a structured debt that takes the country out of debt distress, which is what we've achieved. It is with this very committee, the Official Creditors Committee, that we've now reached an agreement for debt treatment in accordance with the principle of rendering Zambia's debt to be sustainable. Features of the agreement: the debt restructuring agreement covers about 6.3 billion US dollars of central government debt owed to external bilateral creditors and the debt of ZESCO that has been guaranteed by government and also owed to official bilateral creditors. Countries such as China, France, and Germany, and others have agencies that lend money to other governments such as Zambia and some public institutions such as ZESCO. Madam Speaker, the official bilateral creditor countries have agreed to provide the much needed debt relief to Zambia as follows. A, significant debt relief through a significant maturity extension of our existing debt by more than 12 years, with final maturity in the year 2043. So the debt has been stretched up to 2043, a significant maturity extension of our existing claims by more than 12 years, with the final maturity in the year 2043. B, interest rates will be cut from what they are today to very concessional rates during the next 14 years and will not exceed 2.5% thereafter under the baseline scenario. C, principal repayments starting in 2026, 3 years from now, but only for 0.5% of the debt stock per annum for the period 2026 to 2035. In other words, what will be paid will only be a small fraction of what ought to have been paid. Madam Speaker, this agreement also includes an adjustment mechanism that recognizes the uncertainties that exist regarding Zambia's future debt carrying capacity. The adjustment mechanism provides for an accelerated repayment schedule and higher interest rates if Zambia's debt carrying capacity improves from the current weak classification to medium classification. This assessment will be jointly undertaken by the IMF and the World Bank in 2026. Should the assessment show that Zambia's debt carrying capacity has improved from weak to medium. The agreement provides that final maturity will be reduced by 5 years from 2043 to 2038. And B, interest rates will be higher, slightly higher than the baseline scenario. Madam Speaker, full details of the agreement will again be explained to the House and the Zambian people after we've negotiated and signed the memorandum of agreement with bilateral official creditors. So these are the principles upon which the MOU, formal MOU, will be signed, and some of the details will be shared at that point in time. Madam Speaker, the debt treatment that we've agreed with our official bilateral creditors ensures that Zambia's debt sustainability in both cases, whether the debt service carrying capacity is low or moderate. So whether the capacity remains low or moderate, the debt restructuring will ensure that Zambia's debt remains sustainable. Official creditors have also agreed with the government that domestic, that is, local currency denominated debt, that is, treasury bills and treasury bonds, will be excluded from end treatment, which means that the fear that some people had that if I buy Zambian treasury bills or treasury bonds, these bonds will also be subject to restructuring, that will not arise because these bonds are excluded. This is essential to preserve financial stability and ensure a well-functioning domestic debt market. Madam Speaker, the postponement of payments through extended maturities will generate about 5.8 billion in debt service savings over the period 2023 to 2031. I repeat, the postponement of payments through extended maturities will generate about 5.8 billion US dollars in debt service savings over the period 2023 to 2031. Therefore, Zambia, over the next 10 years, will be paying its official creditors about 750 million US dollars. Without this agreement, Madam Speaker, Zambia would have to pay 6.3 billion US dollars that was supposed to be paid over the period. So with this agreement, over the next 10 years, 750 million. Without the agreement, would have to pay 6.3 billion US dollars. In economic terms, or should I say, considering the time value of money, as described in the IMF debt sustainability framework, this agreement delivers close to 40% in reduction of our debt burden as a result of the postponement and the reduction of interest rates. 40% reduction in the debt. Benefits of the agreement. The agreement with official creditors has several benefits for the country and beyond in various ways. Firstly, as I just said, it generates 5.8 billion in debt service savings, which unlock resources that can be utilized for our developmental programs. In the absence of debt restructuring, Zambia would have had to pay $6.3 billion to the official creditors in the next 10 years. With the restructuring, the amount reduces to $750 million only. on average $75 million per year. B, it unlocks extra funds from cooperating partners. This year, 2023, for example, arising from the agreement reached, both the IMF and the World Bank will disperse funding to Zambia. In the case of the IMF, in the next 1 month or so, $188.8 million, and the World Bank, $75 million. The debt restructuring, therefore, will result in positive cash flow for the country as opposed to the situation without a debt restructuring agreement in place. Whereas it is true that debt servicing will resume in 3 years, the effect of restructuring, the reduction in principal amount payable due to stretching the maturity, as well as the lower interest rate, means that the actual cost of debt servicing will be very low. At the same time, the support coming from cooperating partners in support of Zambia will exceed debt servicing. This means that Zambia will enjoy positive cash flow when one compares the debt outflows, which will resume in 3 years, versus the debt inflows and other extra cash available for development. C, it provides a pathway to restoring debt sustainability in the medium term, thereby leading to an improved macroeconomic environment. In particular, the impact on the exchange rate stability of this agreement is tangible. I wish to remind the House that some of our locally issued treasury bonds are bought by non-residents who bring in foreign exchange. Before the restructuring agreement was reached, many new investors in bonds held back their foreign exchange. For those whose bonds were maturing, they chose to externalize their money rather than reinvest for fear that their bonds might be subjected to restructuring as well. This contributed to pressure against the kwacha-dollar exchange rate. With agreement in place, this concern is no longer of significance, and therefore, everything else held constant, this should assist to get the exchange rate to be more stable compared to before. D, it will promote renewed interest for Zambia as a country dedicated to economic transformation, making it easier to attract more investment. E, it paves the way for debt restructuring to be undertaken in a number of African countries or those close to facing debt stress. Next steps, Madam Speaker, we still have some work to do with our official bilateral creditors, even after this agreement made under the auspices of the G20 framework for debt treatment. The next step will be to negotiate and sign a memorandum of understanding between Zambia and official creditors. This memorandum of understanding will outline in detail the terms of the agreed debt treatment, which will then be implemented through bilateral agreements with each member of the official creditors committee. We will, with the cooperation of the official creditors, expeditiously undertake this work, including undertaking the necessary reconciliations. Madam Speaker, I have so far focused on the official bilateral creditors. Members of the House are aware, though, that as a country, we also have commercial debt that is owed to private creditors for a total amount of $6.8 billion as end 2022, with notably the Eurobond holders, which are $3.5 billion. Madam Speaker, as a nation, We've already been engaged with private creditors, and we are in discussion, and this agreement with official creditors will help to expedite the matters. As a responsible government, we are keen on ensuring that the country should never find itself in a position of unsustainable debt accumulation. It is against this background that we brought to this August House the Public Debt Management Bill, which requires the executive arm of government to seek approval of this House before getting a loan. In conclusion, allow me to express government's gratitude to all our official bilateral creditors for the favorable debt restructuring agreement that was reached on 22nd June 2023. Special thanks to the co-chairs, that is France, China, as well as South Africa, the vice chair, and of the committee. We are also indebted to the Paris Club Secretariat for their support. Thanks to the IMF and the World Bank, who stood with us. Madam Speaker, special thanks go to the hardworking technical team, the ST and his team at the Ministry of Finance, and the Governor and his team at the Bank of Zambia, who exhibited total resilience through this challenging journey. I would also like to convey our sincere thanks to our advisors, both Lazard, the legal advisors, White and Case, and the communications advisors, Highgate. I also want to thank the Cabinet colleagues for their support. This is due to their commitment and active participation in the reform. Not, of course, to forget Parliament, because without Parliament, this reform leading us to where we are today would not have been possible. Finally, allow me to thank His Excellency the President for his visionary leadership and for steering us to where we are today. He spent countless hours deep in the night in unlocking any stumbling blocks that we faced. To the Zambian public, thank you so much for your awesome support. Just under 2 years ago, this government took over an economy that was under stress and appeared to have no certain future. Step by step and methodically, this government is bringing back things in place. We promised to bring down inflation, it's done. We promised to stabilize the exchange rate, it's done. We promised to restore order and peace in markets, it is done. We promised to provide teachers and health workers, done. We promised to reconstruct the country, more especially the countryside, which was left behind. This is being done through CDF. And of course, we promised to restructure the debt, and it is now done. Madam Speaker, with this upward direction of development in our country, the situation is very clear. This is in great contrast to what was happening in the past. With this clear upward direction, I appeal to the Zambians for further support. Madam Speaker, under the government of President Hichilema, this country is in good hands. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Of course, we've run out of time, but because of the importance of the matter that is under discussion, I've used my discretion to add another 25 minutes for purposes of asking questions, supplementary questions, on condition, honorable members, that we don't repeat ourselves and also we don't debate, we are concise to the point. The Leader of Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, thank you for your measured yet detailed statement. Honorable Minister, you stated in your statement that we had put a moratorium on debt repayment since 2020. So I want to be clear on the savings. If we were not paying debt since 2020. And you informed us that things will now be better. Of course, we'll not be living like Europeans, but things will certainly be better. I just want to be clear where these savings will come from. The fact that we're at zero payment for the past 3 years. Now that we are on this program, where we even be expected to pay maybe the interest for the next 3 years before we start paying the principal. I just want to understand where that extra saving is going to come from to, make things better. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank the Leader of Opposition for that important question, which I think needs clarification. Madam Speaker, you recall we said that in my statement, when you combine the debt service with the payments for emoluments, what was left was very minimal. Okay? So the country was in financial distress. And this is where now the IMF program comes in. Because your financial situation is very low. So the IMF programs and the support from the World Bank and other donors comes in to provide you that cushion of funding, which will actually be more than, as I stated, more than your debt service, so that as you structure the economy, you are able to continue supporting the social sectors, in fact, the economic sectors. To simplify this, imagine a situation where you are running a company and it was almost bankrupt. Now, to be saved, your lenders come and say, look, this company is going to close, but we don't want it to close. So, please restructure your company so that there's better efficiency, you can do better. In the meantime, we'll provide you extra financing so that as you put up this efficiency, you still have some cash to enable you to move forward. But of course, it is important that you structure and become more efficient, because this is ultimately what is going to also help you to get out of problems. Remember, this restructuring is not a write-off of everything. Debt still remains. So with that debt still remaining, you need somebody to give you the support, that is the IMF, World Bank, and others, so that you structure, the economy grows, but in the meantime, you have raw materials in the form of this funding that you are getting. I hope that is clear, Honorable Leader. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Zambezi East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to ask a follow-up question to the Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning. Madam Speaker, indeed, it's very clear that UBND's strength stems from doing the normal thing. And only last week, we saw our colleagues hold press conferences.
Order, Honorable Member, just ask the question. We don't have sufficient time. Do not debate.
Madam Speaker, I must apologize that at such an opportunity, we would want to show really how we are elated by this, this milestone we have achieved. What I wanted to find out from the Honorable Minister is how then do you plan to propagate this good information you've provided to us, members of Parliament, especially those of us who understand the steps you have taken, so that it's broken in smaller units for the masses to understand, so that these people do not mislead the masses there, as they have already started last week on Friday, ranting all over here and there. Madam Speaker, I would like to know how the Minister would would actually deal with that portion, which may derail this good initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
I thank the honorable member for Zambezi East yet again for that very important question. And indeed, it does not follow that those of us who sit in here in the front benches are the best communicators. So we will be drawing on people like you, indeed, to understand these things, also to come in and explain. The statement that I've issued, it will also be on the website of the Ministry of Finance, and I urge colleagues to go through. I think it is up to all of us to explain. As for the ministry, the whole of this week with media engagements, there's a meeting with the Economic Association of Zambia and others this week. I think I have 3 or 4 media engagements, and each of these will try and engage. I also want to thank those who are raising questions because it gives us an opportunity to explain. I also want to thank many others who have, especially those who understand in the professional field, who have also taken it as their responsibility to speak and explain. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Petauke Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, a follow-up question to the Minister of Finance is what is the total debt which Zambia is supposed to start paying? Because you have said that there's bilateral, which is 6.3, and commercial, which is 6.8. That's a question, Honorable Minister.
The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
Thank you, Honorable, and thank you, Madam Speaker. The total, of course, is 6.3 for the bilateral, 6.8 for the commercial, but in this game or in this kind of thing, there are a lot of technicalities regarding which debt is considered for restructuring and which is not, depending on the nature of the debt. What I would urge you to do is to focus on 2 things. One, the reduction in the amount of money that we'll pay in the next 10 years. 2, take into account the fact that the 40% of this debt is going down because of the time value of money. And perhaps let me try and explain that. Because I've heard some people on the social media saying this debt is just being postponed. There is no reduction. There is a reduction. Even though there's no haircut, even though there's no write-off, but there is no reduction. There is a reduction. How? To simplify it, let me give an example, Madam Speaker. Supposing there's a young man, for example, he wants to go and marry in Southern Province. So the owners of the daughter say, for you to marry this girl, you must pay 10 cows, for example. You must pay 10 cows. Then the young man says, me, I come from Northern Province, like Honorable. We have no cows there, but I have money. So, okay, you agree. In monetary terms, and if each cow is 5,000 kwacha, it means the reward is how much? 50,000 kwacha, isn't it? Then the young man negotiates and say, okay, So the lobola is 10 cows. The lobola is 10 cows. But I'll pay cash. However, I can only pay this cash over a period of, say, 5 years. In 5 years, the value of the cow is no longer 5,000 kwacha. Maybe it's 10,000. So it means that in 5 years' time, when this young man pays 50,000 kwacha, he's no longer paying a lobola of 10 cows. Right? He's no longer paying a lobola of 10 cows because the 50,000 is no longer worth 50,000 is no longer worth 10 cows. Therefore, money that is pushed to be paid in front, the value of that automatically drops, especially with the interest rate that is lower, in the similar manner that I've explained. So because of this time value of money that I've explained, this is how you come to the 40% reduction in the debt. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Kantanshi.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And allow me to join many Zambians who have congratulated this great move. I think this matter was a bipartisan matter, and it affects all of us and the well-being of our country. Honorable Minister, this gives you a platform to more or less start over again. In this particular case, I'm looking at the economy in as far as it starting to get rebooted so that we can get revenues growing. Now, one of your revenue pillars will be mining. And you will agree with me that the last 24 months have been very, very difficult under the sector, regardless of the incentives they have provided. In fact, we are anticipating job losses in Northwestern Province and in Muflira as well, over 100 from a company called Kafironda. Now, bearing in mind that we still have a lot of work to do, what message are you giving the people of Zambia in as far as one of the great pillars that you need to depend on, mining? What are you going to do? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and the Honorable Member for Kantanshi is absolutely right. This is the time now to focus. Remember, when this government came into office, there were two pillars that we said we were pursuing. First one was to normalize the debt situation, which is now close to being done. The second pillar is, because recall that when you normalize the debt, that does not automatically make you rich. It just helps you to get rid of a burden that was on your shoulders. So to get rich, to get jobs, we now have to crank up and get industry to be going. I really apologize about the delay in sorting out those two mining companies. It's just that there were complications. The manner in which both of these companies found themselves in which the situation they are, there are a lot of legal complications. But I believe that we're getting close, and we hope to reboot the economy. I think there will be further reforms going forward that should stimulate industry in all sectors, manufacturing, agriculture. This is now really our priority number one, to get the economy, to get jobs, to get incomes to be going. You're absolutely right. I agree with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Kabwata.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, the New Dawn government is well known for possessing excellent skills in terms of negotiating. I wanted to find out, Honorable Minister, first of all, Lazard was actually paid $5 million US. I wanted to find out whether this government is actually considering to renegotiate the $5 million that was paid to Lazard. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Honorable. Yes, Lazard was hired to be advisor to this transaction. This is something, an arrangement that we found in place. The attitude we took was that we needed to get over this debt restructuring as quickly as possible. So rather than disrupt things and get another set of advisors, it was prudent to proceed because I think this government has the attitude that if something is working, whether it came under UNIP, MMD, or PF, let it run. If something is not working, whether it is from UNIP, MMD, PF, ourselves, change it. So there's no plan whatsoever to get into the sort of arrangement you are talking about, Honorable. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member from Pika.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Minister, for that statement which clarifies the matter. Otherwise, some sections of society thought we had the cash 6.3 billion. Madam Speaker, as of 2021, the external debt for our country was 13 billion US dollars. Honorable Minister, the people of Mpika want to know how much is our current external debt. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As of first quarter 2023, this debt is standing at just 14 billion US dollars. Obviously, the debt has gone up, and the reason for this is very clear because it was never hidden. At the time when we were doing the budget for 2023, we came to this house and laid out the borrowing plan, and everything that we've borrowed is in accordance with that plan. What was the borrowing for? Some of it, as I explained before, there were projects. There were projects that were started under the PF, left in the middle, where it was deemed that if you abandoned it, you would actually be worse off. A good example of this is the Kafulafuta Dam in the Copperbelt province. Okay, it went to, they had large progress made. If we stopped, so what? You've spent so much money, there'll be no water collected, you are losing. So in cases like that, we said we'll proceed to get this loan to finish off this project. Obviously, there are also some other areas where we did borrow. You are familiar with the 300 million that we borrowed from the World Bank to do the farm blocks. You are familiar with the $300 million for the tourism. So these are the things that we have borrowed. But I believe that the assessment now, the decision to take a loan or not, I believe we are doing it carefully so that there's value for money. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Solwezi East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This gives us hope as the people of Solwezi East Mushindamo district, knowing that in 2024 we are going to have an allocation for our CBD to be constructed. Minister, you mentioned that this debt restructuring is going to help in terms of stabilizing the exchange rate. There was a concern last week by Honorable Anton that the sharp exchange rate between the dollar and the kwacha is going to put pressure on the economy. So there was this concern. What assurance are you giving the Zambian people that they shouldn't worry about the sharp rise in terms of the kwacha gaining? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Honorable. Indeed, as I explained, one of the sources of pressure against the Kwacha in the recent months, recent years, was this issue of non-residents coming to the country with the dollars, change into Kwacha, and buy treasury bills. This is something that has been going on for years, from maybe 1993, 1995, despite of the financial infrastructure of this country. Now, when there was no certainty that the debt was going to be restructured, or when this discussion started, some of these people brought dollars to buy our treasury bonds. They became jittery. Okay? They stopped bringing the money inside the country. For those who already bought the bonds, when those bonds matured, rather than reinvest into the bonds, many of them were taking the money out of the country. I think this year alone, because of this uncertainty, the figures show that about $800 million left the country. In other words, those who brought in money, bought treasury bonds, when they matured, they didn't reinvest, they took the money out, so roughly $800 million. And this is part of the pressure on the exchange rate that we've been facing. That's why in the midst of that pressure, we used to explain that part of this pressure is because the debt restructuring has not been resolved. So when the announcement was made, some of those who were on the fence with their dollars, of course they came in, they said the matter is now clear, there's no threat of our bonds being restructured, so they invested. I believe that, therefore, at least on this account, on this source of instability, I think we are in good hands now. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Chairman North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for that ministerial statement. Honorable Minister, while debt restructuring brings in a lot of potential benefits, such as improved cash flow and also avoiding default and bankruptcy, it has also got some disadvantages. In some cases, debt restructuring may require...
Or ask your supplementary, your points of clarification.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, some debt restructuring may require collateral or security for the debt, where you attach property. In an event that the borrower fails to meet the restructured debt obligation, you lose those assets. This debt restructuring deal, has we attached any assets to this particular issue? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Certainly, on the debt that we've acquired as a government, there's been no pledge of assets. We've looked through the debts that were acquired by the PF government. There was also no asset pledge that we've seen. So the fear that we have, Honorable, is not warranted. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Sikongo.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. Madam Speaker, my question goes like this. When you create a problem and fail to solve it, and then someone else comes to solve that problem, what is expected of you that has created that problem in that case? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Smuchi, for that good question. I think Honorable Munduvile has heard, and they should stand up and answer. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The last question will be from the Honorable Member for Chinsali.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Minister, for the elaborate statement. I would just need to get a clarification from you, Honorable Minister. In your statement, you stated that the debt servicing savings that will come as a result of this debt restructuring will be an amount of about 5.8 billion from now to up to 2031. But I'm meant to understand that this amount of 5.8 billion that you mentioned is freed up fiscal space and will be more or less like a debt servicing deferment. Why are you then referring to it as a debt servicing savings? I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If you remember, I said that part of getting out of this problem is the support that we are getting from the donors to cover for that and beyond. So this is where the extra cash is coming from. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's what time could allow us. I see there are so many other questions, but feel free, please, to engage the Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning if you need further clarifications. I have also permitted the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation to make a ministerial statement. The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Madam Speaker, first of all, I wish to express my gratitude to you for allowing me to present to this August House a statement on the visit to Russia and Ukraine by Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, President of the Republic of Zambia. Madam Speaker, in line with this country's foreign policy, the Zambian government remains deeply committed to promoting peace, security, and stability regionally, continentally, globally, and globally as a catalyst for socio-economic development. Madam Speaker, this includes the Russia-Ukraine war and the various peace and security situations across our continent, Africa, where the President has already been involved in preventive diplomacy, conflict resolution, peacemaking, and peace building. In this light, President Hichilema joined the Presidents of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, the Union of Comoros President, His Excellency Mr. Azali Assoumani, and the President of the Republic of Senegal, His Excellency Mr. Macky Sall. The delegation, Madam Speaker, also comprised the Prime Minister of the Arab Republic of Egypt, Honorable Mustafa Maudbli, Honorable Jean-Claude Gakasso, Foreign Minister from Congo-Brazzaville, and also Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda, Special Envoy and former Prime Minister of the Republic of Uganda. Madam Speaker, the African Peace Initiative draws upon Africa's own track record in resolving its own conflicts by encouraging open dialogue and negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. Madam Speaker, the Africa Peace Initiative is motivated by the humanitarian crisis and the far-reaching consequences of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which includes disruptions to Africa's commodity supply chains. As this House is aware, Madam Speaker, Zambia, together with other African countries, has been adversely affected by the disruptions in the supply chain, resulting in food insecurity due to the rising cost of grain and fertilizers. Unfortunately, also, Madam Speaker, the human cost of war includes loss of lives, especially on women and children who are defenseless, displacements of families. In this, I refer to forced migration and the destruction of countries and property. Madam Speaker, Development cooperation programs to developing countries such as ours also tend to be negatively affected when resources instead of are being directed to war, peace, and security. Madam Speaker, in recognition of this, President Hichilema has embraced the Africa Peace Initiative, seeking to contribute to global peace for the creation of a conducive environment for the economic and social prosperity of all people. Madam Speaker, during this visit to Russia and Ukraine, the Africa Peace Initiative delegation held discussions both with President Putin and also with President Zelensky. And in these discussions, African leaders underscored in their mission, first of all, they prioritize the ability to listen, honest conversations, to understand both the priorities of Russia and the priorities of Ukraine, and also to understand their perspectives on this war. This was the first step of Africa's contribution to other global initiatives that are aimed at ending this war. Madam Speaker, every war must come to an end. In their engagements with these two world leaders, the presidential delegation from Africa emphasized the need to consider dialogue and the process to negotiate as a means to end this conflict. They also addressed the repatriation of war victims, women and children that have already been displaced, while recognizing that the world also has a profound responsibility to contribute towards post-war reconstruction. Madam Speaker, I wish to emphasize at this point that the API initiative to Russia and Ukraine is not an isolated initiative, but it is one of the several global efforts that are currently underway, under which President Hichilema and other world leaders are already involved to promote peace, security, and stability for the world at large. Madam Speaker, Africa is fully seized with the efforts aimed at resolving conflicts through already established mechanisms under the auspices of the African Union, AU, under SADC, under COMESA, under which President Hichilema is chair, and the International Conference on the Great Lakes Region, ICGLR, amongst others. And Zambia, as an active member of these organizations, Madam Speaker, is already involved and remains totally committed to initiatives and efforts aimed at addressing various peace and security situations on the African continent, such as the unfortunate conflict in Sudan, the ongoing situation of war in eastern DRC, and also in the Cabo Delgado region in northern Mozambique. The House may recall that this government was compelled to repatriate Zambian nationals from Sudan not long ago following the outbreak of war. In this regard, Madam Speaker, President Hichilema will assume the chairmanship of the SADC organ on politics, defense, and security cooperation in August this year, and this will give him another opportunity to coordinate peace initiatives in our region. Madam Speaker, going forward, the President will continue engaging his counterparts, other African leaders, to facilitate dialogue in areas of conflict on our continent, while urging the global community to explore all possible avenues to end the devastating war between Russia and Ukraine. Madam Speaker, as I get closer to conclude, I wish to affirm the importance of upholding fundamental principles of territorial integrity among nations, the respect for borders, and peaceful dispute settlement, as outlined by the African Union's Constitutive Act and also the United Nations Charter. Zambia continues to leverage on our own country's established experience in conflict resolution and promotion of peace, security, stability within the region and beyond, and also to stand with others in their time
of difficulty, and most importantly, to protect our own country's interests. Madam Speaker, we must also recognize the interdependence of nations. Conflicts elsewhere do affect countries like Zambia in the social, economic, and well-being of our own people. As President Hichilema continues to say, and I quote him, instability anywhere is instability everywhere. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members are now free to ask questions on points of clarification on the ministerial statement given by the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, the Leader of Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Minister, for that statement. Honorable Minister, Zambia as a country has been involved in peaceful dispute settlements within the region and beyond, from time immemorial. Zambians followed the visit of His Excellency the President to Russia and Ukraine very keenly. Now my question is, following the events as they unfolded, does the delegation feel there are areas where they would have done better, be it message packaging or indeed just information, given this particular visit? Do you think the delegation feels there are some areas where they could have done better so that for future engagements, maybe they will improve in those particular areas? I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Madam Speaker, thank you to the Leader of Opposition for that important question. Madam Speaker, the responsibility that was confronted by the group of African leaders is a very complex situation, extremely complex, and that it has been going on for some time. And also it suffices to mention that this is not the only initiative that our leaders have been involved in. There are other initiatives that are happening at the UN level. This is one part which takes us to the next level. The intention of this engagement, dear colleagues, was to give an opportunity for African leaders to get their own first-hand information. And in this process, even our president was able to have a one-on-one with President Zelensky to have an in-depth understanding of Ukraine's priorities and also a one-on-one engagement apart from the group meeting for the president to have an in-depth engagement of Russia's perspective on the war. Now, what are some of the pluses? One plus is that just the ability to have an audience with the warring parties was a step in the right direction. The capacity to have honest engagement with both leaders, President Zelensky and President Putin. The situation, both situations on either country, Madam Speaker, was risky for African leaders. So at this stage, I think it's difficult to find any negatives from that initiative. We must appreciate it. More needs to be done. I think it's too soon now. I think the African leaders are now strategizing on the next engagement. Another positive is that both President Zelensky and President Putin have agreed to engagement. So there are more positives which outweigh any negatives that may be perceived. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Skongo.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. Madam Speaker, the initiative that was taken by the African leaders, I think, is commendable. Now, my question is to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Given this wonderful initiative, where you see African leaders teaming up together and to go and intervene, not in an African problem, but in a European problem, does this mean that now we are seeing an Africa that is getting united and be able to speak for the people of Africa and the world at large? I thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Madam Speaker, I pick positives from the question in that in a situation where it is visible that the scars of war are affecting families like I described in my statement, every effort accounts for something. And Africa's own experience in dealing with the liberation struggle, our own conflicts on the continent that have been resolved before, and those where African leaders are working to resolve adds to that process, which I may call, or which the President calls, the road to peace. And the efforts of Africa also adds to the efforts that all other world leaders, everybody wants this war to end. And of course, for a group of African leaders to stand up together and move to go and get involved on a global issue is a sign that Africa, of course, there's some level of unity that must continue and must be encouraged. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Chama North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for that ministerial statement. Minister, of course, Zambia has been an ambassador of peace in the region and beyond. I want to find out why didn't we give priority to the conflict in Sudan than going to Europe when our neighbors are fighting in Sudan? Don't you think that it was going to be a deal for us to go and solve the problem in Sudan? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Madam Speaker, I think the assertion that African leaders prioritize a war that is outside our own continent is misleading. Misleading in the sense that, as a country ourselves, right now there is war in the northern part of Mozambique, in Cabo Delgado. As a country ourselves, we have troops in Mozambique. We even have air equipment, aircrafts in Mozambique to end the war. Another effort that we are making on the continent is that in a matter of weeks, Madam Speaker, President Hichilema takes over the chairmanship of the organ under SADC that is responsible for mediation, politics, is responsible for peace. So it is not correct to say that African leaders, including our president, prioritized a war outside. What is also true, Madam Speaker, is that we recently hosted the COMESA Heads of State Summit. One of the key issues that was discussed when the president was taking over chairmanship was the issue of the war in Sudan. And in our deliberations just across the road here at Mulungushu, Sudan was represented in the negotiations. And personally, as your foreign minister, I presented a report to the heads of state that touched on the war in Sudan. So that assertion that African leaders prioritized a war that is outside their own continent I think, is misleading. There are efforts that are happening within the continent, but that must not negate Africans' responsibility to resolve wars that are outside our continent. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Kankoyo.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think one of the benefits which have come with the trips, so many other trips the President has undertaken, is to improve the image of this country. We from the Rugby Fraternity are so happy that come this weekend, we are hosting 10 different countries for the first time to compete for the French International Olympics. So, Madam Speaker, I want to ask the Minister of Foreign Affairs, are there other benefits we intend to see from the trips the President has been taking, which are in the short term, medium term, and long term? I thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Madam Speaker, one of the things that the House must be conscious of is that not too long ago, Madam Speaker, the reputation of our country in the eyes of the international community was unfavorable. And the quickest way, Madam Speaker, to restore credibility is for our own country to show political will at the highest level possible through the President to rebrand our country. Even what Honorable Msokotwane here mentioned, the Minister of Finance, in order to bring all the debtors together, there must be trust. And the President needed to meet some of these creditors himself. If you recall, the House may recall that on the first trip after the President was sworn in, one of the key responsibilities he took was to go to New York and meet the bondholders. The President met more than 50% of them himself. The trip that the President made, Madam Speaker, to France just last week is one of the trips that have culminated into the debt being resolved. Prior to that, last month, Madam Speaker, the President was in France again to have a one-on-one discussion with the President of France to accelerate the process of debt resolution. Another issue, Madam Speaker, which has led the President to make certain strategic trips urgently for the country, is to ensure that foreign direct investment, which had completely dwindled due to lack of trust in the Zambian economy, is restored. And that is where we are. If you check the numbers at finance, Madam Speaker, you will see that committed funds coming into our economy as a result of strategic trips made by the President are yielding good results. Further, Madam Speaker, as Foreign Affairs, we are responsible for managing the President's travels. One of the key things that we have put in place is to manage the size of the delegation. What we found in our ministry, Madam Speaker, is very, very different from what you see now. There were huge delegations that had little economic impact on our country. Let's not forget that at some point in the past, each time a head of state was going to New York, musicians were part of the delegation. Madam Speaker, our government used to hire, the records are there, boats and yachts for people to have a good time while outside traveling. The current situation now, Madam Speaker, records are there, is that it's back-to-back engagements every time the President is out. And we carry the media. Every meeting that the President is involved in can be watched, can be seen through the media. All engagements of the President are seen. And immediately the President concludes his business, he vacates a foreign land to return home to address the urgent issues that he has, even here back home. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Feira.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's good to see my brother, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Understandably, he's been out. Madam Speaker, I just want to do a follow-up on the Leader of Opposition's question regarding the outcome or the lessons learned from the trip. Obviously, the trip is commended, and Africa perhaps has made a statement that they belong to the global world. Madam Speaker, the issue is, from the voting that we did at the UN, we voted against the war, whilst other countries, actually abstained. Have we learned something from this trip that perhaps if we had not voted, then would have appeared more neutral and perhaps more effective in the trip that we undertook? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Madam Speaker, it is good that the Honorable Member has brought up that issue so that we deal with the issue of misinforming the nation that Zambia did not vote wisely at the UN. Madam Speaker, in a war situation, people die, children die, women die, lives are disrupted. How then do you go to the UN, Madam Speaker, and say, while people are dying, we are going to remain neutral? How? And what does that do to the credibility of our country? We will vote against any acts of aggression as a country. Any acts of war, we will vote against them. For the reasons that I've outlined in my statement, the cost of war is too great. One life that is lost in war is too much. So, Madam Speaker, for the member to even take a posture that Zambia should have been neutral in an act of war, which is currently ongoing, is not correct, and it is not fair. He should try and say that to the people in Ukraine who have been killed, to say that a country like ours should have been neutral while you are being attacked. Would that be correct, Madam Speaker? We want to give confidence to the Zambian people that every vote that our government takes at the UN is carefully calculated. And we will continue, Madam Speaker, to vote against any act of war, regardless of which country is involved in it. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members, let's restrain ourselves from debating while seated. The Honorable Member for Kamfinsa.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on the 7th of March, the Republic of Zambia, among the 141 countries, condemned the war on the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. A trip was undertaken by the Republican president in a delegation that went to seek a peaceful resolution to the matter. Minister of Foreign Affairs, don't you think this trip has come a bit too late? Wasn't it possible for this powerful delegation, a very necessary delegation, to engage the two presidents before voting against the war? Because I'm sure some facts have emerged after the tour. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Madam Speaker, the delegation of African leaders that went to meet President Putin and President Zelensky was not selected by chance. As foreign ministers of the presidents of African leaders, we sat and planned this trip for many months. If you look at the delegation, there are no two countries that actually have the same position on the war in Ukraine. In that presidential delegation, some countries have been abstaining for a long time. So that mix, Madam Speaker, is what made the trip even more effective. Again, at the expense of repeating ourselves, Madam Speaker, Zambia will never support any act of war. And it's important that this House supports this government's position, because war, the cost of war, is too great. And there are no regrets, Madam Speaker, on the part of government to vote against war. And just to add more clarity, Madam Speaker, when your government colleagues voted against war, it doesn't mean that we voted against Russia. What we voted against is an act of aggression and an act of war. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Mwense.
Minister, in your statement and subsequent answer, you recognize the fact that the war is complex. Now, in the engagement that the President and his colleagues from Africa had between President Putin as well as President Zelensky, were there any indications or signs that the two leaders from Ukraine and Russia are willing to have the conflict that is ongoing resolved through negotiation and dialogue? I submit, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Madam Speaker, that was one of the positive takeaways that African heads of state took away. After listening to both President Zelensky and also President Putin, what was very clear, Madam Speaker, is the willingness by both heads of state to go the route of dialogue. But like I mentioned, also mentioned by the Honorable MP, is that the situation is complex. Each side has its own set of requirements and priorities. Now, it requires a process of maybe de-escalation, a process of bringing the sides together, and to begin to actually do the negotiations to stop the war. What came out of those engagements, Madam Speaker, was willingness by both President Putin and also President Zelensky to table their priorities on one table with the hope of ending the war. But I must emphasize here, Madam Speaker, that this is a difficult situation, and it will take a number of steps. The initiative by the African heads of state is just the beginning of the process to the road to peace. So we must give it time. We must wait for the next, without being too preemptive, on the next level of engagements. And both Russia and Ukraine have indicated that they would want the African heads of state to come back to take the negotiations to the next level. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Kaumbwe.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to ask a follow-up question to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Africa has 54 heads of state, and President Hakainde Hichilema was one of the presidential delegation to Ukraine and Russia. What special characteristics or recognition was given for the president to be amongst the presidential delegation? Is it because of the history of Zambia, or special recognition by the president's talent or something like that? I thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Madam Speaker, without putting the president on the spot, I think what is also clear to us is that the credentials of our country has improved. Even for us to be involved, Madam Speaker, at that level has shown the progress that we have made. But perhaps we should give some credit to the president. I think the president has represented our country well as the chief salesperson for our country. And the president has done well, and that is why Zambia is able to engage even at that level. And we shall continue to do so. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Kasenengwa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is a bit similar to the Honorable Member for Kaumbwe. Welcome back home, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. We don't know when you'll be going back again. My question to you, though, is I wanted to find out, these African leaders, did they go to Europe as African Union, or it was a special delegation chosen by the African Union? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Madam Speaker, the group of heads of state that made that African initiative was carefully selected. As must mention here, Madam Speaker, that deliberately the composition did not allow for a leader of delegation. It was a group of African leaders. In that composition, we also had, Madam Speaker, the president of the Comoros, who is the current chair of the African Union. And also in that composition, Madam Speaker, we had President Macky Sall, the immediate past chairperson of the African Union. So in that respect, Madam Speaker, African Union made deliberate internal steps to select a group of African leaders to represent the whole of Africa in those negotiations. And I think they did a stellar job to start the actual negotiations for Africa to put its own footprint on the process to the road to peace. And I think Zambia was well represented, and we need to do more to ensure more peace in our own region, more peace outside Africa. And these are the steps that also help to improve and elevate our own credentials that are already solid as a country in conflict resolution. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you very much. Since there are only two more members who have indicated, we can accommodate them. There will be Honorable Member for Wacha and finally the Honorable Member for Mpika. Honorable Member for Wacha.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you so much, Minister, for the delivered ministerial statement. Minister, I just want to find out what measurable outcomes are we expecting, and when in as a time frame, especially after the delegation of the presidents engaging the two presidents for Russia and also Ukraine. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Madam Speaker, I don't wish to be preemptive in answering that question, but just to repeat what we've already said, that this war situation, Madam Speaker, is a very complicated one. At this stage, after just one visit by African leaders to put a time frame, I think would be incorrect. It is too early. A lot of things came out as an outcome there, and we must allow for the due process to happen. And because of this question, Madam Speaker, I want to say something that I've already said, that there are other initiatives that are being made by other world leaders to ensure that there is peace between Ukraine and Russia. And this initiative by African leaders is not in any way competing with other initiatives that are there. But we must do our part as Africa, and ultimately, I think all efforts are leading to a peaceful resolution. and without any timelines being attached at this stage. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. Finally, the Honorable Member from Pika.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise on a point of order, standing order number 65.
Order. Since you have, that concludes then the ministerial statement. Now you can, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you, Honorable Minister, for that very good statement. However, Madam Speaker, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs veered off from his statement and started bringing in the issue of musicians, that in the past musicians were being part of the presidential trip without cogent evidence, Madam Speaker, against the standing order number 65. Was in order, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
The Honorable Member from Pika is himself out of order. Question for oral answer under Standing Order 76. The Honorable Member for Itesh.
Question number 308, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Minister of Water Development and Sanitation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Mutinta, Member of Parliament for Itesteji, is asking the Minister of Water Development and Sanitation the following question. A, whether government is aware that in the last 1 week there has been a critical shortage of water in Itesteji urban district, and B, if so, what urgent measures are being taken to improve the water reticulation system in the district and avert waterborne diseases. Madam Speaker, in response to the question, I wish to inform this august House as follows. A, government is aware that there has been a critical shortage of water in Itesteji district for the past 1 week. This is due to the failure of pumps at the water treatment plants, which has been attributed to unstable power supply. To put water supply service provision in context of the urban areas of Itesteji district, the House may wish to note that ZESCO has been producing and treating drinking water, while its Lukanga Water Supply and Sanitation Company has been distributing the water to customers in Kataba and Masemu wards. Under B, Madam Speaker, the following are the urgent measures being undertaken to improve the water reticulation system in the district. 1, government, with the support of the Itesteji Power Corporation and ZESCO, is working on replacing the failed water pumps. The equipment has already been procured and was delivered to Itesteji. However, it requires some modifications for it to be successfully installed. The water supply situation is likely to normalize by 1st July 2023. 2, Lukanga Water Supply and Sanitation Company managed to lobby for resources from Itesteji Power Corporation for designing adequate water production and distribution system as a long-term intervention for stable water supply in Itesteji. Number 3, Madam Speaker, the ministry is also in the process of arranging for a water bowser to supply water in times of emergencies to the urban areas of Itesteji district. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Supplementary questions. The Honorable Member for Itesteji.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for the responses from the Minister. I would want to perhaps pose a question to the minister where he mentioned that Lukanga Water has engaged Itestes Power Corporation to construct a plant for water. The minister, would you kindly clarify whether that engagement is coming from Lukanga or it is part of corporate social responsibility from Itestes Power Corporation? And for the long-term solution for the water crisis in Itestes, the one you've mentioned that there's a plant to be constructed. What are the timelines when that new plant will be constructed? Thank you.
Thank you. The two questions have been asked. So the Honorable Minister of Water Development and Sanitation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I also want to thank the Member of Parliament for Itestes for that follow-up question. Madam Speaker, what I mentioned was that Lukanga has managed to lobby the Itestes Power Corporation. Now, as to whether that is part of the corporate social responsibility, I think what is important here is that there's been that engagement between Itestes Power Corporation and the Lukanga in order to design and build a water treatment plant as a long-term measure to cater for the ever-growing population of the Itestes district. In terms of the timeline, Madam Speaker, with your indulgence, I think allow me not to provide timelines here because these are issues that require resources to be put up. But suffice to say that this is the direction we are taking. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. This is a constituency-based question. Honorable Member for Itestes, you have exhausted. You've asked two questions already. And please, let's not bring in other constituencies. So I will allow the Honorable Member from Frila Magoe to ask their questions. Honorable Member from Frila.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, Itestes, especially this part which has piped water, is among many across the country which face the critical shortage of water supply. And you have mentioned in your statement that plans are underway to organize a water bowser in the interim to supply water there. But I also know that many of these water utility companies are struggling with water bowsers. Isn't the ministry putting in plans to help these water utility companies with water bowsers across the country? Thank you.
Honorable Member from Free, you were guided. This is for Itestes. The Honorable Member for Magoe.
Speaker, thank you very much. Honorable Minister, Itestes is surrounded with huge water bodies. Where is the problem for the water company to help supply water in time for the people in Itestes? What challenge are they facing which is making them to fail to deliver the necessary commodity? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Water Development and Sanitation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I also want to thank my brother, the Member of Parliament for Magoe, for that follow-up question. Madam Speaker, it's true that Itestes is one of the districts with plenty water bodies. However, the biggest problem in terms of water supply is as a result of old water infrastructure in the district. And this is why we are saying that there has been some engagement between Itestes Power Corporation and Lukanga Water and Sanitation Company to ensure that we design and hopefully resources allowing build a new plant which will be equal to the task to produce and supply water, adequate water, to the ever-growing district of Itestes. So the biggest problem here is the infrastructure, and as you heard in my statement, the problem that has been faced in Ite Stage the past 1 week has been as a result of the failures of the pump, which are quite old. But again, sometimes the supply of water is as a result of power failures. You may wish to know that almost all our utility companies have to depend on power supply from ZESCO to pump water to their catchment areas. So at any point when ZESCO is not able to supply power, it means we experience a shutdown. So some of the critical shortages that we experience in the various CUs or commercial utilities, sometimes it's as a result of power failure. So when ZESCO is undertaking maintenance activities, it means that we are not able to produce and supply water. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable Member for Iteshideshi, you addressed 1 in 2 questions, so you exhausted your chances. We only allow 2 questions. Question for oral answer, Understanding Order 74. The Honorable Member for Lumezi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question 309.
The Honorable Minister of Home Affairs and Internal Security.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Honorable Member of Parliament for Lumezi, Honorable Mnia Zulu, asked the following questions. A, whether the government has any plans to procure a motor vehicle for the police in Lumezi district, and B, if so, when the plans will be implemented. Madam Speaker, in responding to the questions raised by Honorable Zulu, I wish to inform the House that A, government has plans to procure motor vehicles for the Zambia Police Service to Kata for all constituencies in Zambia using the Constituency Development Fund, and Lumezi district will benefit from the procurement. And B, the procurement process is in progress. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Supplementary questions, Honorable Member for Lumezi.
Madam Speaker, I'm most grateful, and Honorable Minister, I'm extremely grateful for your response. Honorable Minister, as you are aware, you allowed us to form WDCs that make decisions on what the people need. Lumezi sits on 5,200 square kilometers. CDF, which you've usurped the powers of the WDCs.
The Honorable Member, just ask your supplementary question. Do not debate. You are bringing in issues where you are asking for other answers which are not related to the question. Just ask your supplementary question. You may proceed.
Honorable Minister, Lumezi is sitting on 5,200 square kilometers. Are you sure the vehicle that will be procured by the CDF funds will do the necessary job? I submit, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Home Affairs and Internal Security.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the vehicle is not adequate, I can ask the Honorable Member through CDF to buy another one.
Thank you. The Member for Mitete.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, you've just indicated to say the procurement of this. He used his mother language. I'm using my mother language. The process of procuring this vehicle for Lumezi and other constituencies is in process. When is this process ending? Is it this month, next month, or September? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Home Affairs and Internal Security.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member for Mitete. Madam Speaker, I was assured that the first batch of the vehicles will start arriving in the country within the next 1 month.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Lumezi.
Honorable Minister, it's not a vehicle that will be used by me as a member of parliament. It's the people that brought me to this house. Which money will we use to buy another vehicle, especially that you've responded to encourage me to buy another vehicle? I seek your serious guidance because the people are listening in Lumezi, and this is not a matter that we can dramatize. Honorable Minister, people transport suspects of those that steal cattle to Lundazi.
The Honorable Member, you've asked your point of question. Don't debate it. Let the Honorable Minister answer. The Honorable Minister of Home Affairs and Internal Security.
I did indicate, Madam Speaker, that my honorable colleague can still graciously use CDF to purchase another vehicle. Because the money is available either this year or next year.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Chinsali.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, I heard you mention a word procar. What is to procar? Is it to demolish, to buy, or to fix? Thank you.
The Honorable Member for Chinsali. I'm sure you have had sight of the order paper, and the word you are referring to is there. It's just the manner in which you choose to pronounce it. So that is not a question. Can we make progress? Next question, the Honorable Member for Lupososhi.
Madam Speaker, question 310.
The Honorable Minister of Local Government and Rural Development.
Thank you, Madam. Mr. Emmanuel Musonda, the Honorable Member of Parliament for Lupososhi, is asking the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development at A, why the construction of Musele Sobingi Road in Lupososhi constituency has stalled. At B, when the project will resume. At C, what the cost of the project is. And finally at D, what the time frame for the completion of the project is. Our response.
Order. As the time is 16:40, I suspend business for 20 minutes for a health break.
And on the floor of the House was Local Government and Rural Development Minister Honorable Gary Nkombo, about to respond to a question that has been posed by Mr. Emmanuel Musonda. And the House is currently considering questions for oral answer, understanding order number 74. In case you missed out, time now to look at what has been considered on the floor of the House starting at 14:30 hours.
Yes, Claudette, and when business resumed at 14:30 hours, Madam Speaker did make an announcement in which she acquainted the House with a visitor, that's Ms. Leisa Vasleko, who is a member of the Committee on Climate Change in the Parliament of Ukraine. She did welcome the visitor on behalf of the National Assembly of Zambia warmly.
Thereafter, Madam Speaker did render a ruling on a point of order raised on the 13th of June 2023 by Mr. S. Kampyongo, Member of Parliament for Shuangandu constituency, against Honorable M.E. Mposha, MP, Minister of Water Development and Sanitation, for insinuating that there are houses full of money without substantiating his assertion. After that ruling, Madam Speaker did permit the Minister of Finance and National Planning, Dr. Musokotwane, to make a ministerial statement that was on the debt restructuring agreement with official bilateral creditors.
Madam Speaker later on permitted the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation to give a ministerial statement on the visit to Russia and Ukraine by the President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema. And so far that's the business that has been considered, but just now we take a break.
In a bid to create awareness and inspire action on the Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs), the United Nations in Zambia has partnered with the National Assembly of Zambia to sponsor weekly radio and television programs on Parliament Radio and Television. The SDGs, also known as the Global Goals, were adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015 with an aim to end, among others, poverty, reduce inequality, and build more peaceful, prosperous societies by 2030. Speaking recently during the launch of the SDGs program series at Parliament Buildings, the Right Honourable Madam Speaker of the National Assembly of Zambia, Madam Nelly Muti, MP, FAPRA, said the program series is aimed at creating an informed citizenry about SDGs.
National Assembly and the United Nations have come together to produce this program series that is aimed at creating an informed citizenry about the SDGs. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, the establishment of the Parliamentary Broadcasting Services Department was done in order to take Parliament closer to the people through the broadcasting of live parliamentary proceedings and committee meetings, in line with our Strategic Plan Pillar 2 on public participation. The station also disseminates information on the operations, functions, and activities of Zambian Parliament. Furthermore, Parliament TV and radio dedicate airtime to broadcast of developmental, educational, and informative programs in order to contribute to well-informed citizenry that is central ingredient for a healthy and sustainable, stable democracy.
And Acting Clerk of the National Assembly of Zambia, Mr. Roy Ngulube, encouraged the public to actively follow the program series.
The program series, which is produced by the National Assembly of Zambia in partnership with the United Nations, is aimed at creating awareness about the SDGs in order to encourage radio listeners and TV viewers to be actively involved in the implementation of the goals and achievement of Agenda 2030. The SDGs are a universal plan for all countries to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all, amongst others. Hence, it is imperative for all stakeholders to be involved and contribute to the implementation of the goals in order to achieve sustainable development. You may wish to note, Madam Speaker, that apart from the mandate to broadcast the live parliamentary debates and committee meetings, the parliamentary broadcasting services are also responsible for informing the public on various important issues that affect their lives.